Hey there, my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today it has been about, a week since we've been quarantined. I am just in my comfies in my house. This is where I've been every single day. It's kind of weird for me though. I mean, I work from home a lot, so not a lot has changed as far as my everyday life. A lot of my clients are destination clients, so I don't really see them on a face-to-face basis anyways. So my heart goes out to all of you who have completely had to change your lifestyles and your routines, and maybe some of you have even lost your jobs due to this current situation. So first and foremost, I just want to say that I am so sorry for whatever you're going through, especially if you are here because you are worried about the status of your wedding. I know this is super difficult time, and I hate that I am even making a video on this. However, this is an important topic to talk about right now. Obviously, I am talking about the coronavirus situation going on in our country. Today it is, what is today? March 25th. So I wrote a blog about this last week, and I kind of waited to do a video because I wanted to see how things progressed, as this is sort of an ever-changing landscape and situation, and the different regulations and laws across the country are continuously changing. Since I wrote the blog last, I guess this is a good thing, but not a lot has changed other than certain restrictions in certain parts of the country as far as official lockdowns and closures of different businesses. However, what hasn't changed is the timeline that we're looking at as far as weddings and events go. So let's start from the beginning. Unless you've been living under a rock, you probably already know this, but the COVID-19 coronavirus has basically shut down all events as of right now. So when the shutdown happened, it was, I think it's been almost 2 weeks now, and there was an order to stop all events that were 250 people or more. And a little over a week ago, it went to no events over 50 people for an 8-week period, and then for 2 weeks, no events or gatherings with more than 10 people. So the 2-week time frame ends in just about a few days here, I believe, and then we're in that 8-week time frame of no more than 50 guests. So what to do if you're planning a wedding during this time? Obviously, if your wedding is in the next 8 weeks, so if your wedding is mid-May or earlier, there's a good chance that you are going to be required to postpone your wedding. So obviously, the regulations and sort of what's going on to your area might not be the same as what's going on in my area. So I encourage you to do your own research and make sure that you're just staying on top of the updates in the news surrounding this situation, as there are different counties that are more restrictions and different types of closures and regulations. So if your wedding is in the next 2 weeks, chances are you've probably already taken the steps towards postponing your wedding. If your wedding is after this 2-week mark but before the 8-week mark, which is when all the events have to be under 50 people, you do have some options here. All of us in the wedding industry are very familiar with the situation at this point. We're here to help you, and we're here to walk you through and do whatever is best for you and your wedding and your guests and your family and all of your loved ones, and choose the best plan of action for you and for your wedding. That is what we're here for. I know that this sucks. I know this is super stressful, as if planning a wedding isn't stressful enough on top of everything else that's going on in your life. But that is what we're here for. So please don't hesitate to reach out to your wedding planner, any of your vendors, and just start that communication and talk to them about what you all agree is the best decision for your wedding. That being said, there are a few options that I can recommend to you right now. So if you're one of those people that are getting married within the next 8 weeks, but after 2 weeks, and you would rather do absolutely anything but have to postpone your wedding, you do have a few options. Number one would be obviously to greatly reduce your guest count. If you do plan to have a wedding within the next 8 weeks, you must bring your guest count to below 50 people. Again, this is subject to change. That timeline of this could change and the requirements could change. So it's best to just get your guest count as low as you possibly can and create more of an intimate elopement style wedding so that you can still keep your wedding date and just have those that are very close to you, probably your parents, grandparents, siblings, a best friend, and just have this really small, intimate ceremony. You can always do a big reception style celebration later on once all of this is cleared up, and it might be something that you don't even need a venue for. This could be, you can find a nice backyard, you can save some money in that aspect where you're not still having two events. Another thing that you can do if you're still shooting for a wedding in the next 8 weeks is to hold your event outdoors. If this is a possibility for you, it is recommended that any interaction you have with other people, that it has happened in a well-ventilated area or outdoors if possible. You also are going to want to opt for a plated dinner rather than a buffet style, and this will be much easier when you have a smaller guest count as well. You want to eliminate anything that's going to be commonly used or touched by your guests. So you don't want to use the same serving utensils or dishes, everyone going through the same line of the buffet and constantly being touched by other people. So opting for a plated dinner will allow the space and everyone to have their own utensils that they're touching so that we're not cross-contaminating a lot of things at this wedding. It's also a good idea to include sanitizing stations throughout your space and encourage guests to use them as often as possible. Especially right before dinner, or if you're doing toasts and they're using the same microphone, want to keep that nice and sanitized in between each person as well. It's also a good idea to edit your floor plan so that you can spread guests further apart. Now, this whole social distancing act that's going on right now is you are supposed to be maintaining a 6-foot space in between you and another individual. So if you're maintaining a safe distance between all guests, then that will decrease the chance of spreading any sort of sickness to any of your guests or anyone who might have been exposed to it and doesn't know it. So spacing out tables, having less amount of people per table will help with creating this distance between individuals. Another option that you have is to keep your wedding very intimate and small. Maybe you even have just a couple of people there and offer a live stream. So you can ask a videographer to provide this service for you. You can ask a close friend to just go live on a cell phone onto social media. There are apps and companies like Event Live and My Stream Wedding that you can look into that will provide this service for you as well. This way you can feel like all of the guests that were initially supposed to be invited can still participate in your wedding day in some way and not feel like they are completely left out or feel like they have the option or feel like they have to travel to get to your wedding because there's no other option, they don't want to miss it. This way they don't have to make that decision and they can still be a part of your wedding day without physically having to be there. So now let's talk about the weddings that are past the 8-week mark but are still in this sort of danger zone. So this would be weddings in from the end of April to the end of May, really. So anything before the beginning of June is somewhat in the air right now. So we don't know how long this is going to last, how long our businesses, restaurants, this quarantine, all of that is going to be going on as this is something that we are continuously tracking. And it really depends on how we act right now as a country and how we are following the restrictions and the regulations that are provided for us as to how quickly that we can move on and get back to our normal life. So that being said, I know it sucks. I know that this is just, it's not what any of us want to do, to be stuck at home and to not be able to go back to our normal lives and go frequent the places that we usually go to and see our friends and have communication. I know it, okay? No one wants to be doing this right now. But please, please, please just remember, this is not about you, it's not about me, it's about our country as a whole and protecting those that are more vulnerable and stopping the spread of this virus. The quicker that we are able to adhere to those restrictions that are being set forth for us, the quicker that we can return to normal and none of this will even be an issue anymore. You can go back to planning your wedding as normal. Okay, my rant is over. So, how to know if you should postpone your wedding. There are a few questions that you should ask yourself if you're in that zone where you're like, I don't know, my wedding is kind of close to that time, but I might be safe. Should I postpone? Here are some questions you should pose to yourself that will hopefully guide this answer for you. Are you having a destination wedding? This can mean out of the country or simply to a different state. If you're having a destination wedding, it is imperative that you are doing your research on the location where your wedding is to be held. As I said before, restrictions are different across the country. There are different places such as Southern California that are on complete lockdown where you can't leave your house unless it's an emergency. And if you have an event, you will get fined, a pretty hefty fine, or you could even go to jail. So this is a pretty big deal and it shouldn't be taken lightly. So make sure that you are doing your research and you're familiar with what's going on in that area. If you're planning a destination wedding out of the country, with all the travel restrictions, depending on when your wedding is, might be a good idea to postpone just so that you aren't getting stuck out to try and get to your wedding location or to be able to come back in. Another thing to consider is how many of your guests are traveling to get to your wedding. If your guest list is comprised of more than 50% that have to travel by plane, this also might be a good idea to postpone your wedding for the reason I mentioned before, where all the travel restrictions are a little bit unpredictable right now and they're kind of happening on a dime. So it's hard to be able to predict what could happen with flights and travel, and if there's not enough people on a flight, there's a good chance that it will just cancel altogether. There won't be any way to anticipate this, and you would hate for a lot of your guests to be stuck somewhere trying to get to your wedding, or worse, you to not be able to get to your wedding. Third, are there elderly or immunocompromised VIP guests? So this means, do you have parents, really close people that you absolutely do not want to miss your wedding that are elderly or immunocompromised? If this is the case, you probably want to postpone your wedding because you don't know who of your other guests might be exposed to the virus and they don't know it yet. Another question that we've covered already, is your guest list over 50? Now, depending on your wedding date, if you're looking into later May, you're probably going to be okay with having a larger guest count. There's a chance that restriction could be extended, so it's probably a safe bet that if you want to move forward with your wedding, you restrict your guest count as much as you possibly can. Now, just keep abreast of the regulations and when that's lifted, as you might be able to change that in 3 days and have all of your guests. But to be proactive, it's probably a good idea to minimize the amount of people that you are going to have at your wedding as soon as possible. Lastly, is this whole situation just stressing you out more than you can bear? I know a lot of people's entire lives are changing right now with job prospects, working from home, having to completely change their entire life. And if that on top of stressing about whether or not you are going to have your wedding when you want it, the way you want it, and all of that, if that's overly stressing you out, just postpone your wedding, okay? It's not worth your mental health to be weighing on you that much if it's to a point where you are just stressed out to your max every single day. Maybe you're still fine and you'll be able to have your wedding when the date comes, but if it makes you feel better, just talk to your vendors, try and get postponed, and just check it off the list and get back to normal life. As normal as you can right now. Other ways that might help you decide if you should postpone your wedding are determining what your worst case scenarios are or your priorities. So do you simply just want to get married no matter what? You and your fiance, you want to seal the deal, tie the knot, and be legally married on April 12th. Then do it. Keep your date, have just a couple people there, have an elopement, go to the courthouse, go to the top of a mountain. Maybe you saw some really beautiful Pinterest mountaintop elopements that you thought were so cool, but you didn't think you could ever get away with that because you had to have the big elaborate wedding where all your friends and family were there. Hey, now is your chance to do that. Are losing deposits and the financial burden of postponing your wedding one of your worst fears? So obviously, before we get further, I just want to across the board recommend postponing versus canceling your wedding. If you're in this situation at all, please just postpone your wedding date and don't try to cancel altogether and just wait for things to clear up. I know it might be difficult to be able to determine when you should postpone your wedding date for. However, if you can just talk to your vendors and tell them that you're going to postpone, maybe for a fall date, maybe for next year, whenever it might be, you're not going to lose the deposits that you've already paid for them. If you opt to cancel, yes, this is a different type of situation where you are not just calling off a wedding or canceling a wedding. You're still probably not going to get your deposits back. If this is a concern of yours, talk to your vendors, let them know that you want to postpone, find a date, whether that's, I know it's hard to postpone a wedding because we don't know when to postpone it to, but find a date that's later this summer, this fall, next summer, whatever it may be, so that you can keep your deposit and just apply it to that other date. Chances are you're not going to get your money back on whatever you have paid because those are typically non-refundable deposits. There might still be other financial implications that you will encounter during the process of postponing or canceling. You might not be able to use all the vendors that you currently have right now, and so you might end up losing some money down the road. If this is something that really concerns you, just move forward with your date and just have one of those small intimate weddings that we've discussed already. Also, is the thought of not having all of your closest friends and family with you on your wedding day just tragic? Is that just something that you that's really important to you for your wedding, being able to celebrate with all the ones that you love? Then this is the time to touch base with all of your vendors to come up with a date where all of your guests can attend and you can move forward with the wedding that you always envisioned you would have. If your wedding is early to mid-June and beyond, please don't stress about postponing your wedding. It is not advised to postpone your wedding past the beginning of June at this point. So I'm remaining hopeful that this situation will go back to normal after that 8-week time frame where the regulations are occurring. So please just take it one day at a time and don't feel the need to postpone your wedding just because the environment of this whole situation is really stressful right now, because likely if your wedding is June and beyond, you're going to be just fine, and going through the process of postponing or canceling a wedding is very involved and honestly more work than it's probably worth, because you're likely going to come up onto your wedding date and realize, hey, I could have just had my wedding the way that I planned. So as this is an ever-changing situation, obviously stay abreast on what's going on, stay updated, but as of right now, take it one day at a time. Wait 2 to 3 weeks, see how things are going before you make a final decision, and don't worry about postponing your wedding right now. We have lots of brides and couples that have no choice but to postpone their wedding, so they are the ones that we would like to have priority on focusing on postponing their wedding and making sure that they can get all the vendors involved and find a date that works. And if everybody's just free for all postponing their wedding for the entire season right now, it's going to get super chaotic. So please don't stress if your wedding is June and beyond. I truly believe you're going to be just fine. I'm remaining hopeful that we will return to a normal wedding season here shortly. So if you've reached the point where you decide that you do want to postpone your wedding, here are the steps that you should take when doing that. Number 1, you want to check your insurance. If you have wedding insurance, you want to definitely read through it very carefully. Decide if your policy covers something like this, what applies in this situation, and if you don't have wedding insurance, now is the time to get it. So that being said, if you're acquiring wedding insurance post coronavirus, it's likely that there might be an addendum in that existing wedding insurance that does not apply to any cancellations or loss of fees pertaining specifically to COVID-19. So that's just something to talk through with your insurance agent, whoever you get your wedding insurance from. However, it's still a good idea to have this to protect you from other things that could pop up during the course of this situation. You also want to make sure that you're reviewing all of your contracts. You want to see what exactly it is that you agreed to and you signed your name on for all of your vendors. Just determining whether your deposit is refundable or transferable will be in the contracts and those sorts of things. Third, you want to talk to your planner. This is when having a wedding planner comes in handy quite a bit, because they are probably the one that's going to take the reins on contacting a lot of people on the back end to go through this postponement process, so that you don't have to kind of takes the stress off of you and having to reach out and contact to all the people that you've already confirmed information with. If you don't have a planner, now's the time to get one. Even if you haven't had a planner for the course of your wedding planning, even if it's just a day of coordinator, it's someone that can help guide you along this process and kind of hold your hand to make sure that you are following the appropriate steps, and someone there to bounce ideas off of, and just make sure that you are going through this process as efficient as possible. Additionally, you want to talk to all of your vendors. You want to keep that open communication about where you're at, finding a new date that works for all of you, and what their policies and steps are moving forward, as each vendor might have a slightly different way to go about this postponement process. And lastly, you obviously want to communicate with your guests. So making sure that your guests know exactly what is going on as soon as possible is key, because a lot of your guests might have to cancel plane tickets, cancel hotel reservations, that sort of thing. So the more time in advance you can give them, the better. This is where having a wedding website really comes in handy, as you can post this information and the updates on your wedding website and just instruct all of your guests to check that so that they know the latest updates on your wedding, what the wedding date is, if you have new hotel reservations, that sort of thing. It's all in one spot, and hopefully that'll help avoid all of the text calls, messages, emails, all that fun stuff that you are probably getting from your guests asking a lot of the same questions. If you don't have a wedding website, you can check out Wedding Wire, The Knot, there's Zola, there's a lot of different platforms that will provide a free wedding website so that you can just create a platform that you can have all of the information in one place. Additionally, if you are choosing to postpone your wedding date, I know that this is going to be a stressful time. There's a lot involved. It's a long process and it's a little bit tedious. For this to go as smoothly as possible, I encourage you to really just keep an open mind and be open to other dates. So say your wedding is May 12th and you're like, okay, well, I'll postpone to May 12th or 13th next year, so that you're still having that kind of same wedding timeline, or maybe that date is special to you for some reason. Try and be open to other possibilities. So maybe have a fall wedding, maybe have a winter wedding. Winter weddings are beautiful and largely underrated. That way, keep in mind there's a lot of people that are in your position. A lot of couples are having to postpone their wedding, not to mention wedding season for 2021 is already booking out and other vendors are already booking for that season. So we are sort of dealing with this situation of combining two wedding seasons into one. So being open to a different season of your wedding, different wedding dates, maybe even a Friday, Sunday, Thursday wedding date, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to find a date that's going to work across the board for all of your vendors moving forward, and it'll probably make it a little bit less stressful for you. I know this whole situation is really difficult, and I really truly do feel for you, and I just encourage you to keep in mind that no matter what, you're going to get married, you're going to marry your person, and it might just look a little bit different than you originally planned, and that's okay. I know that maybe moving forward and getting past that idea is the hardest part, because you've been planning and envisioning this day for many of you probably over a year, and it's really difficult to let that go, and I totally get it. But having an open mind, being open about different possibilities, and just letting go of maybe this specific idea that you had for your wedding day. Take a deep breath and just let it go, and know that your wedding is going to happen one way or another, and you're going to get to marry your person, and we are all here to help you. We as wedding vendors in the wedding industry, this is our job. This is what we're here to. This is crunch time for us, and just we are here to help you in any way that we can. Whew, all right. I know this wasn't the happiest topic to talk about, but hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to get more weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice. And I wish you the absolute best of luck with all of your wedding planning among this crazy situation going on right now. If you have any questions, or you feel like there's something I didn't answer or cover, please let me know in the comments below, and I am happy to help you navigate this craziness. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week for another video on wedding planning and advice.